You're going to sign over 15% of this place to your brother tonight. Before close. My father said it the way other people say pass the salt. He was sitting at table 7. My best table. The one by the window, with the view of the Austin skyline. Without a reservation. Without a phone call. Without so much as a knock on the front door. I had not spoken to him. Or anyone in that family. In 4 years. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. Patricia finally set her phone face down on the pristine white tablecloth. She didn't look remorseful. She looked mildly inconvenienced. Your brother made a simple mistake with his investors, she said, her voice dripping with practiced maternal warmth. He just needs a little collateral to keep them off his back. Just $450,000. She reached across the table, attempting to cover my hand with hers. I pulled back, my expression completely flat. We know we haven't been around much, Patricia continued, unbothered by the rejection. But you were always the strong one. The one who didn't need anyone. We counted on that. Your brother needs you to be strong one more time. I stared at her. It was a masterclass in psychological accounting. She was taking 4 years of absolute, freezing neglect and explicitly reframing it as a compliment to my independence. My mind immediately flashed back a decade. I was 19 when I found the $68,000 in credit card debt they had fraudulently taken out in my name. I had spent years in a cramped, unheated studio apartment, quietly paying off their theft to salvage my own ruined credit score. I thought swallowing that massive betrayal in silence would eventually buy me peace. I was wrong. My silence didn't buy peace. It just taught them that my boundaries were entirely fictional. When you endure abuse without consequence, you don't earn their respect. You just normalize their cruelty. To them, I wasn't a daughter who had miraculously survived their sabotage. I was simply a high-yield ATM they hadn't visited in a while. No, I said, my voice perfectly level. The practiced smile vanished from my father's face. The paternal mask slipped, revealing the extortionist underneath. He leaned forward, dropping his voice to a pitch meant to intimidate. You owe this family, Lauren, he said. I know Marcus Chen holds your commercial lease. I also play golf with the head of the local liquor board. One phone call, and I can make your life very, very complicated. You have 2 hours to sign. He had just delivered an ultimatum in the middle of my own dining room. 4 years ago, a threat like that would have suffocated me. But I wasn't a scared 19-year-old anymore. I was an executive chef. I knew that panic in a kitchen ruins a service. When a grease fire erupts, you don't scream at it. You just cut the oxygen. Give me until the end of service, I said, my expression completely deadpan. Enjoy the wine. I turned and walked straight back to my soundproof office. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. Emotion is just bad data in a crisis. And I immediately deleted it from the equation. I pulled out my phone and sent one text to Sylvia, my veteran attorney and mentor. Table 7. Extortion. Need you. Sylvia slipped through the kitchen delivery doors 20 minutes later. We didn't waste time on pleasantries or outrage. I laid out the situation like a broken supply chain. She just nodded and opened her laptop. We weren't going to fight their ridiculous 15% demand. We were going to mutate it. In less than an hour, Sylvia drafted a masterpiece. We structured a brutal personal asset lien against my brother, completely disguised under the dense, boring formatting of a standard business partnership agreement. They thought they were coming for my equity. They didn't realize I was about to audit their entire future. I returned to table 7 holding a fresh bottle of Cabernet and the sleek leather folder. Hospitality is entirely about theater. And I needed to play the role of the exhausted, defeated daughter who had finally realized she couldn't outrun her bloodline. When I set the wine glasses down, Patricia was beaming. It was the victorious smile of a woman who believed she had successfully broken a wild horse. "I'll sign," I said, letting my shoulders slump just a fraction. "But we need to do this properly. My accountant is ruthless." I placed my phone flat on the center of the table, leaning it slightly against a candle holder. I tapped the screen, a small red dot appearing in the corner. State law requires verbal confirmation for any familial equity transfer of this size. I lied smoothly, blending corporate jargon with genuine exhaustion. If my accountant books this as a personal gift instead of a structured business transition, I'm looking at a 40% tax hit. I just need you to confirm the terms for her records. Blinded by their own hubris and the intoxicating promise of a $450,000 bailout, neither Richard nor Brandon even glanced at the camera lens. They didn't see a trap. They just saw an obedient daughter doing paperwork. "Fine," Richard scoffed. He sat up straighter, eager to play the commanding patriarch. "I authorize this equity transfer to my son, Brandon, to satisfy his investor obligations." "Perfect," I said, my voice completely light, like I was confirming a dinner reservation. "And just so my accountant has the complete financial history. She needs to establish this isn't part of a pattern of undocumented gifts. So, I need you to state, for the record, that this transaction is completely separate from the $68,000 credit card debt you opened in my name 10 years ago." Richard waved a hand dismissively, annoyed by the bureaucracy, but eager for the payout. "Yes. Fine. The $68,000 from a decade ago was an informal family matter. This current transaction is completely separate." He said it loudly, clearly. He thought he was clearing the runway for Brandon's money. He didn't realize he had just proudly confessed to felony identity theft on a hot microphone. Brandon barely glanced at the 11 pages of dense legal text, acting utterly bored by the inconvenience of securing his own bailout. He picked up the gold pen and hastily scribbled his name on the borrower line. Patricia and Richard followed immediately, eagerly signing their names as guarantors without reading a single clause. They were too focused on the finish line to notice the landmines. I watched the ink dry on the final signature. Then, I reached out and picked up my phone. I pressed the red square to stop the recording, and the screen locked with a soft, distinct click. That tiny sound was the end of the performance. I let my shoulders straighten. The manufactured exhaustion melted away, leaving nothing but cold, absolute clarity. The atmosphere at table 7 seemed to shift. The ambient warmth of the restaurant suddenly replaced by a freezing, sterile tension. "Thank you," I said, my voice completely devoid of the daughterly compliance I had just projected. "The documentation is complete." I slid the leather folder back across the table, tapping my nail against the bottom of page 6. "I need to clarify a minor administrative detail," I said, looking directly at my brother. "The $450,000 I wired this morning? It didn't go to your investors to satisfy your obligations. It went to them to purchase your debt." Brandon's bored expression faltered. He blinked, the words struggling to process through layers of lifelong entitlement. "What are you talking about?" "I bought your debt note," I explained slowly, letting time stretch out so every syllable could land. "Your investors were thrilled to dump a high-risk liability. I paid them pennies on the dollar. That means the $450,000 is still owed in full. It is just owed entirely to me." Patricia let out a nervous, breathless laugh, looking to my father for reassurance. Lauren. Stop playing. You just signed him on as a partner. I did no such thing. I corrected, keeping my eyes locked on Brandon. You just signed a personal loan note. And that specific clause you completely ignored on page 6? That is an asset guarantee. You just legally secured your $450,000 debt against your personal assets. If you miss a single payment, my company has the first legal claim to your house in the suburbs, your cars, and every account you have left. Extortion? My father's voice shattered the quiet elegance of the VIP room. The paternal warmth he'd worn 5 minutes ago vanished, replaced by a purple-faced, unhinged rage. He lunged forward, his heavy hands reaching across the table to grab the signed asset guarantee and tear it into pieces. But before his fingers could even graze the leather folder, the heavy glass doors of the private dining room swung open. Yenna, my shift manager, stepped smoothly aside. She didn't say a word. She just held the door for the 2 men stepping into the room. They weren't wearing the relaxed, casual attire of my usual dinner guests. They wore sharp, dark suits, and their expressions were carved from absolute granite. These were the investors, the men Brandon had defrauded out of nearly $500,000. I hadn't just bought my brother's debt this morning. I had invited his collectors to dinner. My father froze, his hands hovering over the table. Patricia let out a sharp, genuine gasp, pressing her hand to her chest as if she had been physically struck. But it was Brandon's reaction that slowed time to a crawl. The golden child immunity that had shielded him his entire life evaporated in a single millisecond. He went completely pale, his shoulders collapsing as he shrank back into the expensive leather booth. He looked at the men, then at me, his eyes wide with a pure, unadulterated terror. Looking at him, I realized a profound truth. His lifelong arrogance, the smug entitlement he had carried into my restaurant just an hour ago. None of it was real. It was an illusion. A facade entirely funded by other people's money. Wealth and status for him weren't intrinsic values, they were just a rented costume. Stripped of the stolen funds and his parents' endless financial shielding, he possessed no actual power. He was nothing but a hollow shell of a man, terrified of the very real consequences he finally had to face. I calmly picked up the leather folder, sliding the pristine, legally binding document across the white tablecloth toward the 2 men. Gentlemen, I said, my voice cutting through the dead silence of the room like a scalpel. The $450,000 debt is officially acknowledged, and the collateral on his suburban property is legally secured. He is all yours. I stood up, without the manufactured slump in my shoulders. I easily towered over the 3 of them sitting paralyzed in my booth. My father's rage had completely evaporated, replaced by the exact same hollow panic, currently drowning my brother. Here's how the rest of your lives will work, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but carrying the absolute weight of a judge's gavel. If you ever attempt to contact my commercial landlord, if you ever threaten my licenses, or if any of you ever step foot inside the city limits again, that audio recording of you confessing to a $68,000 felony identity theft goes directly to the district attorney. My father opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Patricia was staring at the tablecloth, refusing to make eye contact with the reality of what they had just done. I didn't wait for an apology. I didn't want one. I caught Jenna's eye through the glass partition and gave her a sharp, single nod. She stepped into the room, bypassing the 2 suited investors who were now standing over my brother, and quietly placed the check for the Cabernet right in front of my mother. I didn't say goodbye. I turned my back on them and walked out of the private dining room, pushing through the heavy swinging doors and stepping back into the chaotic, Beautiful. Blazing heat of my kitchen. Over the next 6 weeks, Sylvia officially filed the asset lien. Brandon, having no liquid capital to satisfy the $450,000 debt, lost his suburban house. I never read the frantic emails they tried to send. I simply blocked their numbers, silencing their entitlement forever. My restaurant went on to have its most profitable quarter in history. I had finally audited my life, and my peace of mind was no longer a negotiable asset. If you've ever had to be the strong one just so someone else could comfortably be the weak one, type "done" in the comments below. Make sure to hit subscribe for more stories of taking back your peace.